Mother. The moment we hear that word, we think of love, of life being given, and of the deepest bond between a mother and her child. But what if I told you that history has known women who were so harsh to their royal children that you wouldn't wish it even on your enemy? And some mothers were even ready to kill their own child in the name of power. Today, we're talking about the strangest, maddest, and cruelest mothers in history. Welcome back to Female Tales. I'm Yulia, and together on this channel, we explore the stories of remarkable women from history. If history speaks to you, like the video, join our community, and let's head straight into the depths of the past. I'll start my story with a mother who is simply strange. The truly shocking and terrifying stories, I'll save those for the end of the video. And our first royal parent decided to do something quite unexpected. She chose to turn her son into a daughter. Yes, to raise a boy as a girl. We're talking about Anne of Austria and her second son, Philippe, Duke of Orleans. Anne had two sons. Her eldest, the Sun King, Louis XIV, inherited the throne at a very young age, and Anne served as his regent. He was raised according to all the traditional ideals of male education of the time. But her younger son, Philippe, was deliberately raised in an extremely feminine way, so that he would never become a threat to his older brother in the future. Anne called Philippe "my little girl" and dressed him in women's clothing for a very long time. Now, you might ask me, but weren't young boys often portrayed in women's clothing in portraits back then? So, what makes this case different? And you'd be right, dressing young boys as girls was quite common, but only up to a certain age. In many European courts, it was believed that until a boy reached a certain age, he remained under his mother's care and protection, and therefore wore feminine clothing. But once he began to grow into a man, usually around the age of 6 or 7, and came under his father's influence, he would then be dressed as a boy. With Philippe, however, things were far more complicated. A contemporary wrote that when Philippe came to play with him as a child, quote, "They dressed me up as a girl every time the little monsieur came to play," and that when Philippe arrived, the ladies of the court, quote, "began to dress him and arrange his coiffure. His jacket was removed, so they put on the coats of the skirts of a woman." So clearly, something unusual was going on. Little Philippe was actively encouraged to think of himself as a girl. Another contemporary, Philippe's cousin known as La Grande Mademoiselle, described finding Philippe, quote, "dressed as a girl with blonde hair," when she visited him at the Louvre. And the fact that contemporaries were writing about this in their letters and memoirs strongly suggests that this behaviour was considered unusual, even for that time. His love for feminine imagery stayed with him into adulthood. Although Philippe was married twice, he had same-sex relationships with many men at court, and maintained a lifelong passion for dressing as a woman. Of course, I wouldn't call Anne a monster just because of this. She was a woman who endured a great deal, fought fiercely for power and her place at court, and, in her own way, loved her children. Still, you have to admit, this is a rare and very strange story. Next on our list of strange mothers is the mother of Queen Victoria, Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, also known as the Duchess of Kent after her marriage to Victoria's father. I didn't include her on this list by accident. It was her mother who turned young Victoria into a true prisoner of the famous Kensington system. You've probably heard of it. It was a rigid set of strict rules that the young princess had to obey, invented by her mother's secretary John Conroy, an ambitious man hungry for power, and widely believed to be the Duchess's lover. And if you thought this infamous system existed purely to protect the life and health of the young heiress and give her a proper education, you'd be wrong. The real purpose was far darker. The system was designed to make young Princess Victoria weak, dependent on her mother and Conroy, and isolated from all other members of the House of Hanover. Deep down, the future Queen's mother likely hoped to wear the crown herself, at least as regent. If William IV had died before Victoria came of age, she would have had every chance to do so. and that, of course, would have also strengthened Conroy's position. Together, they began spreading rumours that Victoria was weak, incapable of ruling, and unfit to govern. King William saw exactly what was happening, and understanding the game being played behind the walls of Kensington Palace, he swore he would live until Victoria came of age. He died exactly 1 month after her 18th birthday. Until the very day Victoria became queen, she was forced to sleep in the same bedroom as her mother. She was not allowed to walk down the stairs alone. She had no friends, only Conroy's daughter and her own sister. She never went anywhere and did nothing without her mother's supervision. So when she finally became queen, the very first thing she asked for was 1 hour alone with herself, and to have her bed moved out of her mother's bedroom. Just imagine how badly that young woman longed for separation. Although the Duchess of Kent tried everything to make Conroy the secretary of the young queen, so that they could continue influencing her, Victoria later claimed that Conroy had nearly forced her to sign documents appointing him while she was ill with typhoid. One of the very first decisions of the young queen was to permanently ban Conroy from her private chambers. Her relationship with her mother remained tense and painful. After Victoria moved to Buckingham Palace with her governess, the Duchess relocated to Belgrave Square. Their relationship improved slightly later when Victoria had children of her own, but she often described her childhood as deeply unhappy, even while admitting that she had been spoiled. Later in life, Victoria wept bitterly at her mother's deathbed and regretted their estrangement. Perhaps she forgave her, or perhaps this was another tragic example of a dependent relationship, where the victim mourns her abuser. But maybe Queen Victoria herself, a woman who, as we know, had no fewer than 9 children, turned out to be a better mother than her own. Unfortunately, no, which is why she also earns a place on this list of monsters. To begin with, Victoria didn't particularly like children. She viewed them mainly as an unfortunate consequence of the very passionate nights she so dearly enjoyed with her husband. Yes, in case you didn't know, the petite queen had an extremely high libido. I actually have a whole video on her relationship with Prince Albert, so definitely check that out. Even before marriage, Victoria openly stated that she would prefer not to have children at all. Apparently, after her first wedding night, she changed her mind. She absolutely hated being pregnant. In letters to her daughter, she described pregnancy as being like a dog or a cow. She described babies as terrible frog-like creatures. As her children grew older, she did become more involved in their lives, but mostly in a strictly disciplinary role. Even Prince Albert wrote to her that you cannot build good relationships with children through scolding alone. One defining trait of Victoria as a mother was her clear division between favourites and outsiders. Her favourite child was Princess Beatrice. Victoria sincerely believed Beatrice should never marry, and should instead spend the rest of her life by her side, comforting her broken heart after Albert's death. When Beatrice dared to fall in love and become engaged without her mother's permission, Victoria refused to speak to her for almost 6 months. Victoria likely believed that the lives of her children belonged to her. For example, when her eldest daughter Vicky announced her pregnancy, the Queen replied, "This dreadful news has distressed us very much." Her daughter, Princess Alice, received her share of criticism for daring to breastfeed her own children. For this, Queen Victoria named one of her cows Alice, and immediately informed her daughter of it. The least loved of all her children was Edward VII, known in the family as Bertie. Victoria blamed him for Albert's death. Like his mother, Bertie was highly temperamental and became famous from a young age for his numerous love affairs, stress which Victoria believed had damaged her husband's health. She wrote that contact with Bertie was unbearable to her and said, "Oh, that boy, I never can or shall look at him without a shudder." Ironically, he was the one who inherited her throne. After Albert's death, Victoria turned her entire life into one continuous mourning, and her already grown children became part of it. Their happiness, and the fact that life went on, deeply distressed her. In short, you definitely wouldn't want to be her child. It was more like a never-ending game of musical chairs. Someone was always out of favour, and someone was always the favourite. Perhaps Victoria, having grown up in such a strange and restrictive family environment herself, simply couldn't become a different kind of mother. And after all, ideas about motherhood were very different then than they are today. And now, a truly horrifying mother. A woman who despised her own daughter from the moment she was born. The mother of Queen Christina of Sweden, Maria Eleonora of Brandenburg. When little Christina was born, the very first words her mother uttered were, "Instead of a son, I am given a daughter, dark and ugly, with a great nose and black eyes. Take her from me. I will not have such a monster." The reason was that the baby's body was almost entirely covered with hair. Of course, it's possible that this reaction was influenced by postpartum depression, as well as Maria Eleonora's tragic past. She had lost several children during previous pregnancies. But whatever the cause, Christina's childhood with her mother remained deeply unhappy. Strange incidents seemed to follow the little girl constantly. Once, a heavy beam mysteriously fell into her cradle. Another time, she fell down a staircase, supposedly by accident. In yet another incident, a nurse was accused of dropping the child onto a stone floor, damaging her shoulder, which remained slightly deformed for the rest of her life. I've often come across opinions suggesting that these accidents were connected to the presence of her mother in the nursery. As Christina grew older, her father chose to raise her as a boy. Interestingly, while Philippe of Orléans was made into a girl, here the situation was the complete opposite. Later in life, Christina would wear men's clothing and have relationships with women. Of course, today, we understand that sexuality is far more complex, and that we are born with our orientation. Still, it's striking how, in two different families, adults try to reshape children according to their own desires, even altering their gender roles. When Christina's father died, her mother suddenly developed a passionate interest in her daughter, something she had never shown before. She wanted to become regent. She was denied that right, but she was allowed to continue raising the child, which turned out to be a nightmare for young Christina. For over a year, Maria Eleonora condemned her daughter to mourning confinement. Christina was kept in rooms draped entirely in black, lit by candles day and night, where not a single ray of sunlight could enter. She forced Christina to sleep in the same bed with her. Above the bed, in a golden casket, hung the preserved heart of Christina's father. The situation was made even worse by Maria Eleonora's constant weeping. Queen Christina later wrote about her mother. She performed her role as a grieving widow to perfection. Eventually, it became clear to everyone that leaving a young princess in the care of a mother who was rapidly descending into madness was a terrible idea. Maria Eleonora was stripped of her parental rights. Christina was taken away and raised by several women at once, deliberately, so that she would not become attached to any one of them. Just try to imagine the childhood of this poor girl. Later, as queen, Christina maintained correspondence with her mother and supported her financially, which, in truth, interested Maria Eleonora far more than the complex and rebellious personality of her daughter. That same daughter would later abdicate the throne, refuse marriage, and choose freedom. But that is a completely different story. If you'd like a full video about Queen Christina of Sweden, let me know in the comments. She is an incredibly fascinating figure. And now we move on to the most terrifying mothers in history, those who, in the end, made the decision to execute their own children. I've already told the story of one of them in a previous video, the Ottoman Sultana Kösem Sultan. She entered the harem of Ahmed I at a very young age and managed to rise from a simple concubine to his legal wife. After her husband's death, she first took on the role of regent for their son, Murad IV. This marked the first time in Ottoman history that a woman effectively ruled the empire, the era of the Kadına Sultanate. Kösem was an exceptionally shrewd political figure. She carried out a number of effective reforms and changes in the state, and she also deeply enjoyed the taste of power, a power she was in no hurry to give up, even when her son had grown up. When Murad began to rule independently, he made the decision to execute his younger brother in accordance with Ottoman tradition, to reduce the number of potential claimants to the throne. Only thanks to his mother's desperate pleas was Ibrahim spared. Her younger son Ibrahim, kept from childhood in a secluded part of the harem and effectively imprisoned, grew into a deeply psychologically unstable young man. When, after Murad's death, his mother came to tell him that he was now sultan, he didn't believe her, until he was shown his brother's body. Kösem had hoped to rule through him and rise to power once again, but she failed to account for one thing. Ibrahim was far too unpredictable, even for an experienced political player like her. He quickly fell under the influence of his concubines and began living a lifestyle far too eccentric for an Ottoman sultan. He spent enormous sums on the pleasures of the harem and even ordered the palace walls of one concubine to be completely covered in animal skins. He suffered from violent outbursts of rage, so severe that on one occasion he nearly killed his own son. Rumours of a mad sultan spread throughout the capital. Uprisings broke out among the elite and the janissaries. Hoping for last-minute salvation, Ibrahim turned to his mother for protection. But Kösem gave consent to her son's downfall, saying, "In the end, he will leave neither you nor me alive. We will lose control of the government. The whole society is in ruins. Have him removed from the throne immediately." After her young grandson ascended the throne, and she once again became the senior Valide Sultan, effectively regent, Kösem stood and watched with her own eyes as her son was executed. Strangled, including by her direct order, unaware that the very same fate awaited her just 3 years later, at the hands of her daughter-in-law, the mother of her grandson. Was the execution of her last surviving son truly a necessity to save the dynasty? Or did he fall victim to her insatiable hunger for power? What do you think? But to me, witnessing the death of your own child with your own eyes is an unimaginable trial for any mother. And to learn the name of the most ruthless mother of all, we have to go deep into history, all the way back to the 9th century. Her name was Irene of Athens. She was a Byzantine empress and the wife of Emperor Leo IV. Like her predecessor on this list, Kösem Sultan, power came into Irene's hands after the death of her husband, through regency for her 9-year-old son, Constantine VI. But Irene was far more ambitious than a mere regent. At times, she demanded that she and her son be addressed as co-rulers, not as regent and ruler. In all decrees, both spoken and written, Irene's name always took precedence over her son's. The boy grew up, but his mother refused to let him take a single step closer to the throne. When Constantine finally reached the age at which he could rule independently, Irene did not step aside. So he decided to take power by force. He issued a decree ordering the army to swear loyalty to him personally, not to Irene. Irene did not retreat. In response, she demanded that the troops swear allegiance to her as the senior ruler, despite being a woman and lacking imperial authority by birth. The military chose the side of the legitimate heir to the throne. Irene withdrew, but only to gather strength and prepare her return. She knew her son's weaknesses well. Young and inexperienced, Constantine quickly lost several crucial military campaigns. Then, he made a fatal mistake. He exiled his wife to a monastery and married his mistress, completely destroying his support among the nobility. On August 19th, 869, Emperor Constantine VI was seized, bound and taken to the porphyry chamber of the Constantinople palace, a deeply symbolic place, the very room where he had been born 26 years earlier. What happened next shocked even Byzantium, a world already accustomed to political brutality. The chronicler Theophanes the Confessor, a contemporary of these events, wrote, "Empress Irene ordered her own son to be blinded, to render him incapable of ruling. The procedure was carried out with iron rods. He was blinded cruelly and without mercy. Constantine died soon after. Historians still debate whether it happened immediately or sometime later. But either way, the woman who carried him under her heart and gave him life later took both his sight and his throne." Irene of Athens became the first woman in Roman history to rule entirely in her own name. She held power for 5 years, until she herself was overthrown. What's particularly striking is that the Church later honoured her as a saint for her religious contributions. But for me, she remains the most ruthless mother in history. So what matters more? Love for your child or politics and power? Everyone answers that question for themselves, and the heroines of today's video clearly made their choice. If you know other stories of cruel mothers from history, write their names in the comments. Maybe together we'll gather material for part 2. See you in the next video.